welcome to today's Big Brother 17 updates and spoilers. Our house guest of the day is John Yoon, and he wants everybody to know that Clay did not audition for this show. He was freaking recruited, which we know, but he was found at a Lakers game. And they were just like, hey, you want to be on Big Brother? And he didn't even know what it was, and he thought it was like a volunteer program, like Big Brothers, Big Sisters. Okay, so thank you, John, for enlightening all of us. All right, let's talk about what's going on in the game right now. The tide is turning. All week, it looked like Julia would be the one staying. People were like, she's not a threat, blah, 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 we're gonna keep her. But they were all like, we're gonna do whatever the twins want, because they thought that they would want Julia to stay. But then Austin has really been pushing for Liz to stay. He's arguing she has a better shot at winning. They need to just go for it. They're going to be a target either way, whichever one stays in the house, so they may as well pick the better competitor. And then Julia was really backing him up and agreeing a lot. She was like, Liz, I want you to stay. So, like I said, everybody's been saying that they're going to vote however the twins want. So are they going to stick with that, or are they going to vote out Liz? And also, with the whole everyone voting the way the twins want, what the F is wrong with these people? You are down to 6 people left in this game, and you're willing to just, like, let somebody else decide how you should vote? That's insane. But anyway, the Oz twins were talking more about how Vanessa has deals with everyone. They're really onto her at this point, and they're wondering, like, should we compare notes with Johnny Mac? They're really worried that Johnny Mac is going to win the next HOH and come after them, so they want to try to shift the target to Vanessa. But they're also worried that if they talk to him about it, he's going to go straight to Vanessa with that information, and she's going to know that they're not, you know, going to stay loyal to her. So that is a concern. They do not want to blow things up before this week's vote, because they're going to need either Vanessa or Johnny Mac's vote to keep Liz in the game. You need 2 votes this week. So, yeah, I don't know. They're kind of like, should we rat her out? They're not sure. So, Steve and Vanessa were chatting in the HOH room, and Vanessa's like, Steve, my final 2 deal with you is for real. Because, like, people are really starting to catch on to Vanessa working with everyone. But she's telling Steve, like, this is the real deal. It's, you know, me and you to the end. But it seems like they'd still rather keep Julia this week over Liz. But then they were discussing, like, do we want to take Julia or Johnny Mac to the final 3 with us? Steve is really nervous that somebody could, like, scumbag and take Julia to the final 2 because it would be easier to beat her. And I'm thinking Vanessa would definitely rather take Julia because she knows that Julia would take her to the final 2 over someone like Steve. Whereas Johnny Mac is definitely more loyal to Steve than he is to Vanessa. So they're both kind of like, who are we gonna take? So then Austin and Vanessa are chatting, and here we go. It's time to flip things. So Austin lets her know, yeah, the twins are leaning more towards keeping Liz this week. So Vanessa's just like, you could see the gears starting to turn in her head, and I don't think she's happy about it. So Vanessa's like, well, there are pros and cons either way, like with whichever one stays this week. So then she pulls a classic move. She tries to pin her vote on Steve. She's like, well, I promised Steve I was going to vote however he wanted this week, so I need to make sure, like, he's going to be okay with it. But if Steve doesn't care, I can vote however I want. So she was basically like, when you're a kid and somebody asks you to sleep over and you don't really want to, but you don't want to say no to their face either. So you're like, oh, my mom said I can't go. It was totally like that. So then, we'll come back to that. Quick conversation between Vanessa and Johnny Mac. She lets him know that the twins want Liz to stay now. And Johnny Mac is like, whatever, it doesn't matter to me. And Vanessa's like, well, it's not good. It's not good. So then Julia talks to Vanessa, and she lets her know she's ready to go. She made it to jury. She saw Zingbot. She's like, it's my time. I'm ready. It was super dramatic. But Vanessa's like, well, that's great and all. I just need to make sure that Steve's going to be okay with it. Again, she's pulling that card. But Vanessa, okay, wait. Julia is like, yeah, whichever twin stays, like, we're still going to be a huge target with Austin, so it doesn't matter. And then Vanessa's like, well, if you were on the block against Austin, you would stay. But if Liz was on the block against Austin, Liz would go. So, like, I mean, that is a good point. But Julie's just like, well, I'm ready to go. So Vanessa, Liz, and Austin were talking, and it's time to make some deals. If Vanessa's gonna do this, she better be getting something out of it. So even though Vanessa agreed many times to vote however the twins want her to, she needs to make a deal, and it's a biggie. She needs Austin and Liz to agree to 3 things. It's a 3-part deal. Number 1, if they win HOH, they cannot nominate her as one of the initial nominees. She understands if she has to be the replacement, there aren't a lot of people left. But if she is the replacement nominee, they have to promise on something very important to them that they're going to keep her. Okay, number 2, if Steve and Johnny Mac are on the block next week, she gets to decide who's gonna stay. And number 3, if they find themselves in the final 3 with her, if it's one of them in the final 3 with Vanessa and either Steve or Johnny Mac, they have to take Vanessa. She's like, if both of you are in the final 3, I understand you guys are gonna wanna take each other, but if it's just one of you, you have to take me. So Austin and Liz are like, well, that all seems reasonable. Okay, well, yeah, sounds fair. All right, let me just reiterate again. Vanessa has agreed many times that she will vote however the twins want, but she still had to make that deal. All right, so on a lighter note, Big Brother gave the house guests some booze and some Chinese food last night, but they were not that thrilled with the Chinese food because they said it was from a restaurant that they did not like, so that's kind of sad. But anyway, Vanessa, Liz, and Austin chat again later, and they decide they want Steve out next week because he went against Scamper Squad. That's not cool. They'd rather keep Johnny Mac around. Interesting. So then Steve and Johnny Mac are chatting, and John lets Steve know, guess what? Liz wants to stay now. And Steve is like, oh, what? Oh my gosh. But Steve, I think Steve is freaking out a little bit because it does seem like Liz is the better competitor between the two of them, and you know Liz is going to be going after Steve. She wants her revenge. So Steve is like, Johnny Mac, you got to win that next HOH no matter what. Like, you better not be throwing any more competitions. Steve also brings up that he wants the two of them to meet with Austin tonight for a hammock date. So I'm thinking this is where Steve is going to start trying to drive that wedge between Austin and Vanessa. He wants to make Austin doubt her, which he already does, but Steve doesn't know that. So anyway, Johnny Mac and Vanessa were chatting again, and this was kind of hilarious because now Vanessa has done a complete 180. She's like, Johnny Mac, we need to keep Liz this week, and here's why. So she's telling him, like, yeah, it's way better to keep Liz. She's going through these BS reasons. She's trying to downplay Liz's competition wins, too. She's like, you know what? Liz isn't even really that good at competitions. All the ones that she won, like, everybody else was throwing. Really? You mean like the time in the Battle of the Block when her own teammate was throwing it and she still won? Yeah, that was crazy. She sucks. So it just sounds so ridiculous when before she was like, we gotta keep Julia. But Johnny Mac does not seem to care. He's just like, yeah, whatever, like, it doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't make that big of a difference. And I'm like, Johnny Mac, like, stop it. So Vanessa, another reason, she doesn't want to piss off the Oz twins. She's just going to go with the flow and do what they want. So then Liz comes in and they tell her, we're going to vote to keep you, so your wish has been granted. So the Oz twins, even after hearing this, are not happy with Vanessa. They feel like she really showed her hand by making that deal. I mean, seriously, like, she told them she was going to vote how they wanted, and she still made that deal, and it was ridiculous. A 3-parter, really? But they figure, like, she must have been planning to evict Liz all along, and she probably had a huge hand in Steve's nominations this week. So Liz is just like, I'm not gonna honor that deal. Oh, snap. Alright, speaking of deals, Austin and Johnny Mac agree if either one of them wins HOH, they're gonna take the other person to the Final 4. That's kind of a big deal. I don't know if they're going to honor that, but we'll see. They also agree that Vanessa is shady. So it's kind of, you know, leading up to that chat that the 3 guys are supposed to be having. So Vanessa and Steve chatting in the backyard. And again, Vanessa is explaining her logic of why Liz should stay. Steve, not really contributing much to this conversation, as usual. He's just like, yes, I see your point. Thank you for telling me this. Yes, okay. And it's kind of ticking Vanessa off. She's like, what are you thinking? Why aren't you saying anything? And Steve is just like, well, whatever. So then Vanessa's telling Steve, I've got this all wrapped up and taken care of, so, like, don't feel like you need to talk to Austin and the twins about it anymore. In fact, like, you definitely should not. Don't talk to Austin and the twins. She does not want him comparing notes with them, because what if they blab about the deal that she made? Nobody knows about this deal yet except for the Oz twins, so it's going to be interesting to see if they call her out on it at some point. But yeah, she's like, Steve, you don't have to worry. If you're up on the block against Johnny Mac next week, I can convince them to keep you. That's not what she was saying before. Yeah, so the dude meeting with Austin, Steve, and Johnny Mac did not happen last night. But Steve was talking to himself up a storm. He was freaking out because he's realizing more and more how close Austin and Vanessa are. And he's really worried about that. So maybe they'll have the meeting today. I don't know. It is Eviction Eve. It's been a pretty slow day so far. The twins are starting to pack up, divide their stuff up. I don't know. I'm thinking it's pretty set now that Liz will be staying, but you never know. Crazy things happen on Eviction Eve. So let me know which twin you want to stay in the comments. And until tomorrow, much love.
Edit.